Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in film, Devin. And today, we're going to be giving our spoiler-free thoughts on the latest movie based off of a video game, which is Five Nights at Freddy's. And before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin, it is finally a Thursday evening we're recording this on October 26th. It is officially Halloween weekend. How's your week been? And do you have any plans for this Halloween weekend 2023?
Honestly, feels like Friday right now. I don't know why. It just feels like we just got through the week, but one more day. As far as plans, tomorrow night, got a nice Halloween party at Jared's. It's going to be a good time. And then Saturday, going to be out of town doing another Halloween party.
Oh, there you go. You got a two for a double feature party going on there.
Yes. I was going to ask, do you have a costume? Are you going anywhere?
So, I'm lame. So no, I don't have any plans right now. Last year I went to a Halloween party and I dressed up as Dustin, season 4 Dustin from Stranger Things. I think that's the only costume I have left. So if I do get any last minute Halloween party plans, I will be going as Dustin yet again. It is a very easy costume. I got my Hellfire Club t-shirt stored away. I got the hat. I got the wig. I got the his little button-up shirt. I got the khaki pants. I'm all good to go. So if anyone needs me, I will be there. And I got my flashlight. I'm good. I'm all gravy, baby. You know.
Yeah, I got a nice Buzz Lightyear costume ready to go.
Oh.
$20 from Amazon. Nice and easy.
You've had so many. Let's see. You had the Wilfred.
Wilfred, that was a classic.
You retired that a long time ago. I remember that. And then the elf costume.
Buddy the Elf, yeah.
Buddy the Elf, yeah.
I think my dad has that one in his possession currently. It's been passed on.
Of course. Man, oh man. There was that one video when he was like singing karaoke in it, I think it was. That was great. That was really great.
Everyone loves the elf costume.
Oh, it's so simple. It's easy. But I feel like this year we're going to get a lot of Kens. We're going to get a lot of Barbies out on the streets as well.
Some Oppenheimers.
Some Barbenheimers. Some Barbenheimers, some Spider-Mans. I feel like it's going to be a good year for Halloween. It really sucks that it's on a Tuesday, though. We have like some kind of luncheon at work, so that'll be fun. I guess that's something for me to look forward to on Halloween itself. But this weekend, as of right now, yeah, I don't have any. But I'm glad that you have plans. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go where the wind takes me. And yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe watch some scary movies. Haven't really watched a lot of scary movies this October. It's blown by like just so fast. So I'm like, my gosh, it's practically already November. But I got to ask you, Devin, really quick before we jump into this review. When does spooky season end for you? Do you cut it off like as soon as November 1st comes, you're like straight into the Christmas season? You put on the Mariah Carey? Or are you let it linger till at least Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I'm willing to extend it into November, even into late November, because we still get some horror releases that come out in November. Like we have that Thanksgiving movie coming out.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a couple other ones too, but yeah, I'll give it November. It's still fall. Leaves are still on the ground. It still feels the same.
Yeah, I've actually looked that up to see when fall ends, or autumn, depending on where you are for our British friends out there. But I think fall ends, it's like midway through December which kind of makes sense because even in like January, February, those are like the harder, or at least in Northeast Ohio area, those are like the harsher winter months. I mean, December is as well, but you know, January, February is like the thick of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I don't know. I Googled, you know, when does fall end, and it said it was like maybe mid-December, something like that. I'm like, I guess that makes sense, you know, from a perspective. But yeah, I agree with the whole spooky season thing. But then again, I don't know, man. As soon as November 1st hits, I'm like all about Christmas, but I don't think I can be this year because I have a lot of spooky games and stuff to finish. So
Alan Wake 2 time.
yeah, that and my God, like you said, we have that Thanksgiving slasher movie coming out as well. So
I think there's a Christmas slasher movie coming out too.
is there really? Oh,
It's Justin Long.
oh, interesting. So not necessarily like Violent Night like we got last year, but
Yeah, it has a funny name, but I'm not remembering. I'm looking it up as we speak. There it is. It's a Wonderful Knife. That's what it's called.
I heard about that. Okay, yeah, I did hear about that. Now that you brought that up, okay, so yeah, we got at least 2 of those coming out. I usually do like a Scream marathon. Haven't made it past the first one, probably because Spider-Man came out mid-October, and there's too many games coming out in October altogether. This year alone, it's been very hard to keep up. But I think the good thing is that you don't necessarily have to. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to play. You know, I've finished like Tears of the Kingdom and stuff, so now I'm like all in on Spider-Man. I think I'm maybe halfway through the story, but I want to get that platinum at some point. So I'm just going to keep playing until I get that platinum. But with all that said, with all that housekeeping out of the way, as we mentioned before, we're going to be giving our Five Nights at Freddy's review here for you guys. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry about us dropping the tea or spoiling anything, any story beats for you guys. We're just going to give our thoughts on the film as we saw it last night on October 25th, 2023. And as of this recording, it is in theaters, obviously for a limited time. And you can stream it on Peacock starting on October 27th, going into the Halloween weekend. So without further delay, we'll be right back after this introduction to Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's is very intense.
A thrill ride.
It's terrifying.
Five Nights is
Scary.
Scary. It's eerie.
nightmarish.
Visceral.
Super creepy. It's out of this world.
We're going to have so much fun together.
And we are back with our Five Nights at Freddy's review. Again, this is spoiler free, no spoilers here, just initial reactions, spoiler free all around. And to give you guys a little bit of premise on this movie, it is based off of a video game franchise of the same name. I believe there is 6 Five Nights at Freddy games right now. I know there's at least 5. I know that for sure. But I think there might be 6 now. And each one has gotten darker and creepier and scarier than the last. But the director of this film is Emma Tammy, and writers include Scott Cawthorn, Seth Sudebeck, and Emma Tammy as well. And stars our boy Peter, Josh Hutcherson, Piper Rubio, and Elizabeth Lale. And the synopsis is as follows. A troubled security guard begins working at Freddy's Fazbear's Pizza. During his first night on the job, he realizes that the night shift won't be so easy to get through. Pretty soon, he'll unveil what's actually happening at Freddy's, or happened, I should say, at Freddy's. So, as we mentioned before, and I'll say it again, spoiler free all around. This is probably one of our most interesting or divisive films that Devin and I have come across. This is rated PG-13 with a runtime of an hour and 15 minutes. And Devin and I kind of talked about it off mic for a while. And, you know, it's kind of nice to know where we're going to set beforehand, but sometimes it comes as a surprise. I was actually shocked to hear Devin's reactions just for a little bit, but I'm going to pass it over to him so he can give his initial reactions on this film. So Devin, take it away.
Yeah, going into this one, just some background. I believe I probably played around an hour total of like all the games, so I'm not like a fan by any means. Was definitely looking forward to this one going into it because it's just that premise that just kind of works where it's like a Chuck E. Cheese type environment and you have evil animatronics and they just look creepy and kill people. And that's kind of an easy premise to stick to and kind of build around. But what we ended up getting is not what I was expecting. And I think what it boils down to is they focus more on the story and the lore than the actual fun elements of the game and the movie, which are the actual killing and creepiness of it. I think if they would have focused more on giving the audience more of the animatronics themselves and them doing creepy / scary things like they're supposed to, it would have been a lot more entertaining for the general audience. Like, for instance, a lot of the kills are done off camera. And I think that always takes away from the movie, especially in horror movies where a lot of what people go for is the kills and the thrill of the just supernatural animatronic demons basically that are hunting down humans is kind of absent here for the most part. But overall, I was very impressed when I heard that the animatronics were completely practical, not CGI. So I'll definitely give them a lot of credit for that because they did look pretty good, especially when you compare them to the game. They look pretty accurate, and it's pretty cool to see them moving around like that. Like they're made by the Henson factory, which is very cool. Obviously from the Muppets. So they did a good job there. Then I also really enjoyed the cast and I think the cast did a good job. And it was impressive that they got a cast like this put together with PETA and Stu Macher.
PETA and Stumacher. Yes, Shaggy makes an appearance, man. And it's like amazing. It's awesome. But yeah, so that is where Devin and my differences lie, I should say. He, wanted to focus more since this was, it is effectively like a slasher movie for kids, teenagers, because it is rated PG-13. I guess you could say preteens, teenagers, however you want to say it. But see, this is where Devin and I kind of there's a line drawn in the sand. I loved how much they went into the lore for Five Nights at Freddy's. I too have played a little bit of, I think it was the first and second game. I didn't get super far into it myself, but I watched a lot of other people play. And it was just fun to see the reactions. There's a lot of jump scares, and that's really what Five Nights at Freddy's is like all about, in my opinion. When it comes to the games themselves, my gosh. So the first game came out in 2014, and it's like $5 on Steam. There's a lot of these games out there. But really, obviously, the first game is really what sets the mood, because it is creepy. Like, verbatim, even though I can't call this like a pound for pound or bar for bar adaptation, more so that it's just, based off of a video game franchise, but they do adapt the lore. There are a few changes within the game with Anne versus the story itself. So I would say it's kind of like a hybrid. It's not like a full adaptation, but in a way it is. But I went to the streets of Twitter after I saw this movie last night and said that Five Nights at Freddy's delivers precisely what I was looking for, an enjoyable horror film that caters to both fans and to the general audience, mainly so just like with the kids out there. And when I say kids, I don't mean like 5 years old. I mean like kids that are like maybe 8, 9 and up. because there was a lot of kids at my screening. I also tweeted that Josh Hutcherson and company, the cast delivers excellent performances all around. I truly do believe that. I thought, with what they were given, they were able to bring those characters to life. I love how Josh Hutcherson's character was more layered than I was expecting, especially everything that is happening with his psyche and what happened to his brother, and trying to unravel that mystery, like the trauma that he's carrying with him, and him living with his sister, and the baggage and the not necessarily burden, but the responsibility that brings with raising a younger sister. But I also tweeted saying that people should catch this movie in theaters. I know that this film is coming to Peacock, but I gotta say the sound design alone and the animatronics, as Devin was mentioning earlier, the fact that the animatronics were practical, that I was very happy with that decision. And the sound design, when it comes to like the little Easter eggs like that they drop within the game, when it comes to the sound and just the overall atmosphere of it, it made it feel creepy and just unsettling and making your skin crawl. So I think the film did a great job with that. Like Devin had said, he wishes it was more geared towards slasher, like more of a full-blown slasher genre, but I kind of like how they decided to go with the lore routes, because with Five Nights at Freddy's, when you're first playing the game, when the game first came out, there wasn't, at least speaking of 2014, just in general, there wasn't a lot of lore, but they started kind of building upon that with each game's release, and you start to figure out, who Freddy is and like what these animatronics are and whatnot. Because at first it's just kind of that super creepy, weird, $4.99 Steam game that you can play to like, impress your friends and see who, gets scared the most. But I really do enjoy what they did with Josh Hutcherson's character. And, it can be a bit predictable at times, which, if you view that, if someone views that as like a critique or not, that's up to them. But it is very by the numbers. It's about an hour and 50 minutes. I was actually surprised it was that long. I thought it was going to hit around like the hour 20, hour 30 minute altogether. But for what it was, like, I would definitely go see this with friends, especially those who do not know what this, what this franchise is. And, clearly I think if they made a sequel, I would go see it just for the laughs. Like I said, I think this is a perfect popcorn flick. And, I just needed it to just be campy and entertaining. And I feel like it did that, at least for me, altogether. But I'll pass it over to Devin. If do you have anything else you wanted to add to the conversation at hand?
I would say if you're a fan of the series of games, obviously, like, just go to the theater and watch it. Like, I'm pretty sure you're going to like it and it's going to be a good time. But if you're someone like me who just knows of the games, but it hasn't really done a deep dive into the lore or the actual story of the games, I would just recommend peacocking it. That's quite the phrase, peacocking it. But yeah, that's what I would say for anyone who's just kind of, if anyone's on the fence about seeing it, I would just play it safe and peacock it if you're not a diehard fan of the game. And also, as far as it being geared more towards kids, I would say I understand why they would do that, but also it kind of just explains why I've seen a lot of critics saying that they aren't enjoying it, because obviously critics aren't kids, and if it's not geared towards them, especially in a genre like horror where you expect it to be more adult themes and more adult visuals and everything like that, that's kind of where the disconnect is, and I can understand that. But as far as a different movie that I could recommend that actually does have some interesting kills and violence involving animatronic creatures, have you ever heard of Willy's Wonderland?
No, I actually thought you were going to bring up Megan.
Megan was actually the first thought that came to my head. It reminds me of Megan, but I think Megan did a better job of like sticking to the concept completely instead of trying to dive into other areas. Like like Freddy's did. It stuck to the campiness and over the topness instead of trying to do too much, I guess.
So for me, like, I'm a very like fun, campy person. You know, I relate Five Nights at Freddy's much more to Goosebumps, where it's like it is horror, but it obviously is like introduction horror for children. Like, yes, there are blood pieces that you see throughout the film, but most kills are off screen for the most part. They do push the boundary just a little bit for it being a PG-13 film, but yeah, for me, I was like, hey, I guess for me, it's like, you know, obviously critics, you know, are going to critique it their own way, but for me, I feel like some movies can be overly critiqued. Like if someone was going to, or like for a good example would be like the Fast and Furious movies. Like every single time one of those movies comes out, like a lot of critics out there will say, oh my gosh, it's too campy, it's too over the top, it's not believable, you know, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, bro, it's been this way for quite a while. Like Fast and Furious franchise knows what it is. So like people saying that the Fast and Furious franchise is, you know, there's no logic to it, but that's not a critique to me anymore because we know this about the franchise. The franchise knows it about itself. So I guess when it comes to Five Nights at Freddy's, more so on for the critic side, them saying that, oh, you know, it's by the numbers. And it's like, well, again, yeah, like it's for kids. You know, the Mario movie was very by the numbers and we talked about it and it plays it very safe. And I think Five Nights at Freddy's does play it safe for it being a horror movie for teens. But people, I mean, at least in my theater, I'm not sure how your theater was, Devin. I meant to ask you, how was your theater experience? Because like I said before we hopped on the mic, everyone like was loving it. Like not saying like, oh my God, best movie ever. It's just they were thoroughly enjoyed, you know, popcorn's flying all over the place, all the jump scares and whatnot. But how was your theatrical experience? Were you sitting next to the Stuckman himself?
Yeah, my theater was pretty packed. I would say the majority of the reactions were laughs. Like obviously there were some jokes in the movie that definitely landed, but then also sometimes we're just kind of laughing at how silly everything is. And I don't really think any of the scares really landed in my theater, at least that I noticed. Like there really isn't anything scary. Like even the jump scares are just like they're not focusing on the main character, like the Freddy's crew. Like it's kind of just one off. Like the jump scares that everyone complains about in horror movies, where it's just randomness that doesn't have anything to do with the actual threat.
So I think what really makes Five Nights at Freddy's scary is the sorry, I'm going through these screenshots of Five Nights at Freddy's, like the video game, like the very first one. And it's like, I'm just looking at these screenshots. It's the animatronics themselves. That is what makes this so creepy. Like,
I think that's where the issue
gosh.
is. We just didn't get enough of them in this movie. Like we get them for spurts, and then at a certain point, a switch gets flipped, and they're just not a threat anymore, really.
The cat's out of the bag, so to speak. But there was a surprise that definitely happened in this movie I was not expecting. But you know, like we've said, like this is the first installment of the franchise. Clearly, they want to make more of these. And honest, I don't blame them for doing that whatsoever. I know, like I said, I know you can stream it on Peacock, but I don't know, man. I would rather just go have fun at the movies. Like this movie is not perfect by any means. And I think it's self-aware of what it is, but that's just me, you know, like we have our different opinions. Like I always respect Devin's opinions. I'll never tell him that, you know, like how many times we see on Twitter people dunking each other for like super random takes, but like, you know, everyone has their own opinion on how they view a movie, and that's what makes it kind of special. But did you have anything else you wanted to mention before we get into our final thoughts and ratings, or did you want to just hop into those right now?
Yeah, let's get into the final thoughts here. I think this is just kind of a flawed movie where it doesn't go as you would expect a horror movie to go because of all the story and lore that they tried to put in here, which I think obviously it's great for any fans of the series. So I imagine most of them will enjoy it. But for an audience member that isn't familiar with all of the lore, I think that's where the movie kind of fails. It takes you out of Freddy Fazbear's and more into a different world, which is kind of, I feel like the whole point of the game is to be in Freddy Fazbear's and have those scares, but we just don't get many of those. As far as the score goes, like I said before, I was very impressed about the practicality of the animatronics. No CGI was used. I thought that was very cool. And the cast is great, obviously, with Josh Hutcherson and Matthew Lillard. Just getting those two just brings up the quality of the movie just that much more. So I'd probably give it around like a 55 overall.
Yeah. It was great to see Josh Hutcherson again. Like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since we've seen him in anything.
Yeah, when's the last time he was in a movie? I know he's been doing some TV, but it feels like it's been forever since he's done a movie.
Like, literally, and I know this is probably not accurate, but the last thing I remember him being in is, I don't know, we kind of grew up with him though. Like, he was in Bridge to Terabithia. Like, oh my gosh, like it's crazy.
I remember he was in that Hulu TV show Future Man a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember that too.
I don't see any movies recently, so it's good to see him back in a leading role here.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Bridge to Terabithia, obviously, he did the Hunger Games movies, but I feel like that's the last time I saw him, like, in a movie. Apparently
he was in a movie with Morgan Freeman in 2023 called 57 Seconds.
57 seconds. Well, I gotta watch that. I just love seeing Josh Hutcherson. The relationship between his character and his sister was very touching. Like I said, they with it being a movie adaptation, this just goes into my final thoughts. You kind of have to like cut corners. I know I've read some people's reactions where I guess they did change a few things from, the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's from the video game to the movie. But, I think it's solid. It's not the best when it comes to ratings. I would probably give it a 60 out of 100. Like we saw earlier, I think you had shared like critics. The critics rating was like 34% of like 27 reviews. I'm like, okay, I don't think it's that low. It is not that bad of a movie. Like, I feel like, Devin's opinions are completely warranted, even though we disagree. Like, I would definitely go see this with like friends who have never seen it again in theaters. It has to be in theaters though, because it's going to scare the living crap out of them. Especially with the sound design, man, I'm telling you, I think it's one of the best parts of the movie outside of the animatronics themselves. But overall, yeah, so 55 out of 100 from Devin when it comes to reviewing. And
yeah, I was going to go with a 45, but then, like I said, the animatronics and the cast.
Oh, you said 45.
That was my original one, but then animatronics and cast bumped it up 10 points.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I misheard you. I was like, oh, it was like 55. He's like 45. I'm like, wait, what? I thought he said 55. My bad. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So the official podcast score that we are giving for Five Nights at Freddy's collectively for the official podcast score is going to be 57.5 out of 100 for Five Nights at Freddy's. And with all that said, that does conclude today's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Spread the love of the Film Optix podcast to a movie lover in need. Now, let's take a sneak peek of what's coming up next on the show and what you can listen to as of right now. So for coming up next, we have a lot to cover. You're going to be hearing our Gen V episodes 4 through 8 review once the season finale drops next week. I believe that's in the first week of November. You're also going to be covering Invincible Season 2, the first 4 episodes of Season 2. So it's part 1 of Season 2 for Invincible within the coming days as well. I'm going to try to push out like a spoiler free, like a quick spoiler free review. And then me and Devin are going to do a more deep dive into episodes 1 through 4 for Invincible season 2. And of course, we have the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, coming out within the next few weeks. I believe we also have possibly Poor Things. It just depends on if I can get a screening to it, as well as maybe Priscilla. I don't know. I just have to wait and see. There's a lot of crazy movies out there right now, so you just have to wait and see. Definitely follow us on Twitter for those updates. And as for what you can listen to right now on the podcast, you can listen to our Killers of the Flower Moon spoiler-free review, as well as our The Fall of the House of Usher review that we actually reviewed both of these with our friend Amanda over from Candid Cinema. So definitely check that out, as well as our Dumb Money review, Loki season 2 episode 1 review. We got a lot of great stuff on the podcast right now that people can listen to. We hope everyone has a safe Halloween as we are recording this on October 26, 2023. We want all of our listeners out there to be safe from harm. So definitely, drive safe, be safe out there. There's a lot of crazy things that happen on Halloween. And we just want you guys to be careful. And yeah. And we hope that, whatever Halloween party that you rock this year, we hope that you are the number one, the king or queen of your little Halloween gathering. Like, you are the best dressed costume type situation. So with all that said, again, thank you all for listening. If you enjoy the show, please take us a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and stay connected with us on Twitter and Instagram, all that social media garbage for the latest updates. That was Devin, and I'm Christian, signing off. And remember, life is like a movie. So go out there and make it a blockbuster.
Peace.